Okay, let's get to our panel right now. Joining us in the studio is Alberto Avendaño. He's an award-winning Spanish journalist and the Washington bureau chief for the National Association of Hispanic Publications. Also with us, Pablo Pardo. He's the U.S. bureau chief for El Mundo, Spain's second largest daily newspaper. From New Jersey, we're joined by Jordi Graupera. He's a researcher at Princeton University and pro-independence supporter from Catalonia. And Joris Slaric is an assistant professor of comparative EU and International Law with Leiden University and a fellow at Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies. Thank you to all of you for joining us. Let's start with Jordi Graupera up in New Jersey at Princeton. So the Catalan president, Carles Puigdemont, is in Belgium. He says he will not seek asylum, but he wants some assurances from the Spanish government before returning. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
Under which conditions do I want to return to Catalonia? We are here looking for guarantees that for the moment Spain is not giving us. Have you noticed the title of the General Prosecutor's document? Have you noticed? They said, the harder the fall. This doesn't show a will for justice, but a will for revenge.
So, Jordi, by leaving Spain, has Puigdemont actually hurt his case for independence?
I'm not sure. Maybe a more relevant question would be whether by charging him and his cabinet with rebellion, which is a crime that in the criminal law of Spain demands the use of violence in an uprising against the government, if that helps at all the unity of Spain or the advance of democracy in Spain. Or maybe a more interesting question would be whether having two explicitly pacifist grassroots leaders such as Jordi Cuixart and Jordi Sánchez in jail without bail since 17 nights ago, if I'm not mistaken, is advancing the cause of democracy and dialogue or the unity of Spain. One must understand that even though the current strategy and communication of this case seems to focus on the idea that the leaders of the Catalan separatist movement are responsible for this, they were just following a collective decision made by all of us who went to Barcelona to vote on the referendum, or to all of us that voted in the parliamentary elections of 2015, in which they ran with a platform that said that they would declare independence during this term. So the relevant question here is whether when they are charging these politicians with rebellion, clearly in a travesty of the Spanish law, they are not charging with rebellion 2 million people or 2.3 million people that went out and voted on October 1st. Now, if the absence of President Puigdemont in Catalonia, which would have not been my personal choice, responds to the fact that the judiciary in Spain is not independent whatsoever, and that is attempting at using the laws to punish them beyond what a democracy and democratic citizens should allow. And by being in Brussels, they can assure that some appearance of justice may be served to them through international courts, then maybe that's an understandable decision.
Okay, Pablo, as we can hear, a lot of legal questions here, but is this a travesty of Spanish law, as Jordi tells us?
Well, I don't see a travesty of Spanish law. I mean, the fact that Carles Puigdemont didn't commit any act of violence, or the two persons that are actually arrested, they didn't commit any act of violence, doesn't imply that they didn't break the law. I mean, as far as I know, Bernie Madoff, he didn't commit any act of violence. He just swindled $65 billion, and he's been sentenced to 150 years in prison, and there's no problem with that. I mean, the Spanish law is pretty clear about, I mean, the fact, the Spanish law and the Spanish Constitution, about what's sedition and what is not. And I mean, regarding the fact that the Spanish judiciary is apparently not free and not independent, I mean, this is something that probably is very well known in Princeton University and no one else in the world, nowhere else, because I mean, no government, as far as I'm concerned, has made any kind of statement whatsoever complaining or criticizing the actions of the Spanish government.
So, Alberto, we have the legal specifics of this case right now, but it's also a political case for Spain. How much of a political crisis is Spain in right now?
It is. It is the most important constitutional crisis since the beginning of our current democracy in 1977. Let me give you, for our American audience, two dates. 1957, 1963. Under Eisenhower and Kennedy, the U.S. federal government intervenes rebel states on the issue of racial segregation. Fast forward 2017, the Spanish government intervenes Catalonia since they declare the intention of independence, and what we are at in front of our eyes is that we have a constitutional government implementing a constitution and implementing their democratic structures. So I don't see why this victimization of politicians who ran a referendum under very strange, impossible conditions and get results that can be questioned, and they want to impose on at least 50%, 60% of their population this utopia of an independence. I think the Catalan society is fractured, and I think there are responsibilities in Spain, obviously, in the current government, in some handling of the situation, but saying that the government is being undemocratic or repressive, I think that's beyond the point.
Joris, we do have the law here, and everybody has to abide by the law in Spain, but it's also, as I pointed out, a political question as well. And the Spanish government is taking a very hard line on the legal side of things. They are throwing the law book at the Catalonian independence leaders. Is there any kind of middle ground here?
Well, in the first place, it's also their basic mandate to uphold the constitution and preserve also the territorial integrity of Spain. If they weren't trying to do that, if they weren't trying to do everything within their power, within the rule of law, then they weren't doing their job right, and then they might very quickly lose, I think, support from probably the rest of Spain.
But, I mean, is there a legal way for the Catalans to get independence? What would that look like?
Certainly, it's follow the procedures in the Spanish constitution, which also involves the federal or the national government of Spain have a referendum in the first place that is legal. I think the Catalan independence movement didn't do itself a favor holding a referendum that was not in accordance with Spanish law.
Yeah, Jordi, there is a regional election called by the Spanish government, a snap election for December 21st. Is that election going to be seen as yet another referendum on independence?
Well, of course, but before I answer this question, let me respond to some things that have been said.
Okay.
First of all, I don't deny that the Catalan government has disobeyed the Spanish law as is expressed in its institutions. I just deny that this constitutes a case of rebellion, which is a very serious crime that demands the use of violence and can be punished up to 30 years in prison. When I say this is a travesty of the law, I refer to this excess that goes beyond what any Democrat should accept for their own country. Second, as per the independence of the Spanish judiciary, the World Economic Forum has established that Spain occupies position 58 in the world behind Botswana. So it's not just here at the Woodrow Wilson School where we think that the Spanish judiciary is not independent. Actually, the Association of Judges, Progressive Judges in Spain, has asked the United Nations to send a representative to Spain because they claim that there is interference by the government in the cases they're trying to deal with, not only in the case of Catalonia, but also in cases of corruption. So again, this is not my view. This is a very established view in the world. And finally, you said that this was a political case, and you're not the only one saying this. Catalans have been saying this for a long time. This is not a question of the law. This is a question of politics. Also, the Constitutional Court of Spain, in the sentence they did after the non-binding consultation, also illegal, of 2014, they said that this was a political question and not a judicial question that should be solved through politics. And this is something that the Catalan politicians and parliaments have tried over and over in the last 7 years. So, of course, the following election in December 21st will be seen as a plebiscite between two positions. One, the application of Article 155 of the Constitution, which allows, or the government thinks that it allows them to rule Catalonia from Madrid, and also the other option, which would be to go forward with the making effective of this republic.
Yeah, Alberto, you wanted to say something?
Well, yeah, the Article 155 is in other constitutions throughout Europe, is part of the constitution of the federal government of Germany. And there is nothing strange about what is going on in Spain. What is a little disturbing is how we are trying to promote and create this propaganda out of Catalonia, like Spain is oppressing me. Spain is as I said before, a young democracy, and is actually an example in many issues. One of the things that Catalans don't stop to think and recognize is that our current democracy has provoked a renaissance of culture, and it has given them a strong power that for them, they would like to have this kind of powers in many states of the United States. So there is a lot of comparative history here that is not put on the table, and we always try to trash the Spanish democracy, and I think it's irresponsible.
I mean, I would like to say something.
Again,
I mean,
this is not true.
It is true that
I'll get you in a moment, Jordi. Go ahead, Pablo.
that there is a degree of political interference in the Spanish judiciary system, like everywhere, starting by the United States, where it is pretty clear. I mean, the United States is another country where there's no right for a territory to become independent. And actually, they had a civil war here because of that. But I mean, this is, I would say, a broader problem in the Spanish context. And actually, this kind of corruption proves that Catalonia is a part of Spain. In no other place in Spain, you will find more independent, theoretically independent institutions. Let's start with media, with the local or regional television that are completely, totally, and absolutely politicized and taken over by the government to implement a nationalistic agenda. I mean, this has been all the time. Everybody knows that, for instance, the Catalan regional TV is an instrument of country, and I'm quoting the former Catalan president.
Right. Okay.
So, I mean, this is a serious problem, not just of Catalonia, but of all over Spain.
Jordi, let me ask you this, and it's a question raised by Alberto earlier on. Why do Catalans want independence?
I like that you asked me this question, even though I don't have a short answer for this question.
Okay, we're going to have to keep it short here.
Just let me say that everyone here in the studio or outside the studio can believe that Spain is an example, or that it has brought some flourishing in culture or the economy, and they are entitled to that opinion as any other people are entitled to the opposite opinion. This is a given in democratic contemporary societies, pluralism of views and diversity of opinions. Now, when you have a minority in your country, a cultural minority in your country, that is recognized in the Constitution as a nationality and not just a region, which institutions with a legitimacy that dates before the enactment of the Spanish Constitution, and has a parliament that says that they're appealing to the right to self-determination because they are a permanent minority, then your answer cannot be, this is not legal. Your answer can only be political. We've seen this in Canada, or we've seen this in the UK. When you have a historical community with a distinct culture and a political sphere that is saying that is discriminated against in the political decisions made by the central government, then your answer cannot just be judiciary.
Well, that's making 1 + 1 equals 3. I just don't get this line of thought.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean,
I can tell.
we have a reality. We have a long democracy, longer than our dictatorship. The Catalans have accomplished what they have accomplished. They have the powers that they have, and they know it. And they have their own issues. And I think that creating this havoc with more than 50% of their own population is close to immoral.
Okay, Pablo.
I would say that the main reason why Catalans, or some Catalans, want independence is the same reason why some Britons want to leave the European Union, and some Americans vote for President Trump. Because they think that the rest of the world is stealing them something. I mean, here in the United States, the guilty parties are China, Mexico. In Catalonia, the guilty party of everything is Spain. I mean, all the time Spain is robbing us. Spain is robbing us. And obviously, Catalonia can become independent, and it can reach it. But it will take them a long time, and they will have to pay a hefty price, because usually states don't break up that easily. And the surprising thing in this whole confrontation is that the Catalans, they thought this was going to be a free lunch.
Okay, Joris, I'm going to get to you and get back to the election that's going to be held in December. What happens after that election? Let's say that there are those candidates who are strong supporters of independence and they win the majority of seats. How does the central government then handle that?
Well, one thing that clearly won't happen is that will automatically lead to independence. I think that's something to bear in mind here. Self-determination has been brought up as a point. It means exercising your right to vote, but what it means for independence is that unless there's really systematic oppression, systematic human rights violations, discrimination, unless that's the case, there's not a right to an independent Catalan state. I think that's a common misconception, that self-determination does not automatically lead to a right to your own state. It means freedom from persecution, discrimination, human rights violations. So it's an election. It'll show us what a snapshot again of what the Catalan population feels like, but many, many more steps to go before we can even contemplate independent Catalonia.
And we are not talking here about a metropolis and colonized nations. I mean, this is completely absurd. I have so many questions on this issue. For example, who is paying for Puigdemont and his people in this trip to the heart of political heart of Europe? Who has paid for all this propaganda out of Barcelona into the world? Who is putting the money into this gasoline to fuel the whole Catalan issue? Maybe the taxpayers. Maybe that's a problem too. I mean, we need to put. Well, we have now a silent majority in Catalonia. I'm not talking about Spaniards. I am from a different historical nationality called Galicia, and we see the Catalan issue as a taxpayer issue, which is a very American way of seeing it, and they really get into trouble.
Yeah, let me go to Jordi on this. Jordi, you see the questions being raised on whether Catalans see themselves as a minority that's being denied political rights, economic rights. Do they feel that they are in some way a repressed minority? Do Catalans feel that they're not getting a fair share of the economic pie? I mean, it is a very productive part of Spain. It contributes a fifth of Spain's GDP.
There are many arguments. It depends on what is your preference, your ideology, or your perspective. Some people claim that there's a fiscal imbalance that has to do with economics and a taxpayer issue. The fiscal imbalance between Catalonia and the rest of Spain is larger than any US state or any German land or any other region in the European Union. So there's a point there. However, this is not my main argument for independence. I think Catalonia is a society in search of political guarantees. When I say political guarantees, I mean two things. I mean, when the Catalan institutions reach a deal with the central institutions, there are no guarantees that this deal will be respected, and we've seen this over and over again. And secondly, the consensus that are reached within the Catalan political sphere between different and diverse parties in the Catalan parliament, these consensus are never respected by the central government. These are a problem of lack of guarantees that have been tried to be solved through different means. Now, once said this, let me say something about self-determination, because two things have been said here. One, that only oppressed nations in the sense of violation of fundamental human rights and particularly life have the right to self-determination, or that only colonies have the right to self-determination. This is a very common misconception about the right to self-determination because it is true that in these two cases, the United Nations has established a roadmap for independence and self-determination, but that is not a case. So that does not exclude the right to self-determination for other reasons, as we saw, for example, in the opinion published by the International Court after the process of independence in Kosovo, not for the case of Kosovo specifically, but in a general way, the right of self-determination is not a positive right in the sense that is established through several rules and procedures. So it's not true that Catalonia has not the right to self-determination. And I insist, not only we can talk about repression, I myself was in Barcelona in October 1st trying to vote in this referendum, and I myself was beaten by the police, and I myself went to the hospital, and I myself went to the court to sue the Spanish police and the Spanish government for this brutal repression that we all saw on TV. So let's be clear about this. We have different opinions, and we are entitled to those opinions. But no opinion should be superior to others just because one has the power of the police behind
but in the issue, we never talk about the so-called silent majority. We never talk about the other. A nation is not a group of ideologues imagining a nation or imagining something that is coming. If the model is Kosovo, I have a problem.
But those heavy-handed tactics that the police used, that was a mistake, wasn't it?
Well, it has been criticized. I myself have criticized in media in the United States. I think the handling from Madrid was not.
What are the greater implications for Spain? You know, something is happening in Spain right now. You know, you could call it a movement, you could call it rebellion, whatever it is. But you know, there are other parts of Spain that want independence as well. We know the Basques want independence. They've been saying that for a number of years. Is there kind of momentum that's moving, you know, now in Spain? Can it be stopped?
Well, I think the most implications we'll see are for the Catalans. So with the other parts of Spain, I happily defer to my Spanish co-panelists. But what my big question mark is for Catalonia is its membership of the European Union. They want independence, okay, or well, the independentist movement wants that, Puigdemont wants that. But what's going to happen after that? I mean,
there's no guarantee that an independent Catalonia will be sort of grandfathered into the European Union.
I'd even say there's a guarantee it won't be grandfathered into the European Union. It's the territorial scope is very clear. I looked it up today. It's all the member states and listing Spain. It doesn't mention Catalonia anywhere. Catalonia could apply for EU membership, but that would require the unanimity of all the existing member states. And I could imagine the way things are going, the Spanish national government wouldn't
and it'll have to go to the back of the queue and fulfill all the requirements for
that too. So at best, it's a lengthy process. At the most likely, it's a dead end.
I would add to this that the chances for the Basque country to follow the Catalan path right now are zero, basically because the Basque traditional nationalistic movement is really scared about what's going on in Catalonia. You have to keep in mind that in Catalonia, I mean, there are two main, let's say, trends in the Basque nationalist movement. One is very, very conservative, very bourgeoisie. The other one is very, very far left. This very, very far left, usually linked to former terrorists, is the one that is been supporting actively the Catalan referendum. Actually, former terrorists of ETA, the Basque terrorist group, have been in Catalonia supporting the referendum, which is, to me, is very crazy because, I mean, these people killed 20 people in Barcelona 30 years ago in a parking lot, and now they are telling the Catalans what they should do, and many Catalans accept that guidance. So, I mean, this is impossible for the Basques to follow this.
Alberto, you know, the rest of the world, of course, is looking at what's going on in Spain right now, and you know, people are looking at this from all points of view. I mean, there's an economic analyst in London, for instance, who looked at this and says that Spain is in for a very long period of disruption right now, and this issue is going to dominate Spanish political, economic, social affairs for a long time.
That would be unfortunate. I agree that this is a test for Spanish democracy, and it is a test and it's a challenge for constitutional rule of law. and it's not only for Spain, it can be for throughout Europe in other areas. I think we are living an era of disruption. We have Washington, we have London, and we have Barcelona, and this is extremely disruptive. We have President Trump and Russiagate, and we have this weakening or this turmoil in Europe. Who are the beneficiaries of this kind of turmoil are my kind of questions. And I don't like conspiracy theories, but I repeat, Spain has a very strong democracy that has been won, and it has been a triumph. It cost us sweat, blood, and tears, or whatever you say in English, and we are an example. I'm sorry to contradict my friend from Princeton.
Pablo, very quickly, I've got 10 seconds. Article 155 with the central government taking control of Catalonia. Yeah. Has that happened already?
Well, it's happening, yeah. I mean, the Catalan government has been, let's say, dismantled. But I want to say that the Spanish government is being extremely careful. I mean, legally, it could do much more to dismantle the whole Catalan apparatus.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks to all of you for being with us.